A girl walks down the stairs. And into a cold, empty street. She counts each step, each number, a fragile attempt at control. She's on her way to buy milk, a simple task. But anxiety creeps in. On the way back, she talks to herself. Restless, fragmented, these are signs of a disturbing mind. It seems obvious that this girl is tormented. Visual novels are a unique genre of interactive storytelling. Unlike traditional games, their main focus is on action. They are nothing special in terms of gameplay, but they do have dialogue, choices, and atmosphere. The player becomes deeply involved in the narrative, where every decision can change the outcome. While many visual novels focus on romance and branching storyline, A Bag of Milk Outside a Bag of Milk takes a very different approach. It uses the format to dive into the fragile mind of a young girl, exploring trauma, anxiety, and the subconscious through surreal dreams. It's kind of my favorite type of visual novel, the ones that say a lot without saying anything. But to understand the meaning of the game, we must first dive deep into it. The girl walks down the hallway. Shadows move around her, intrusive, threatening, yet she ignores them. This isn't courage, it's routine. A mind exposed to fear too often simply learns to numb itself. She passes the kitchen, a cold draft. For a moment, she imagines a corpse behind the door. This is the brain's trick, intrusive thoughts that invade without warning. And when she opens it, nothing, only milk. But the milk isn't just milk, it becomes guilt. She wonders if she stole it, if it doesn't belong here. She decides to continue on her way, walking toward the room. But in front of the door, a creature waits, familiar yet monstrous. It inspects her, pierces her skin with a claw. The act feels clinical, like an injection. She tells herself it doesn't hurt, but her body shakes, betraying her. She vomits milk again. The symbol returns, in a sense corrupted, trauma spinning out in physical form. The creature forces her to promise, never drink milk again. She obeys, but she has obeyed before. The loop always resets. And so the question remains, is she still trapped in the bag, trapped in the loop, like milk inside a bag of milk? We find the girl again in a room. She brushes her teeth, exhausted. Her body tells the story, dark circles, heavy eyes, yet in a room after all the chaos, she finally seems safe, or at least safer. Her mom told her to get ready for bed, so she follows the ritual, wash her face, brush her teeth, but rituals don't guarantee peace. When she stares into the mirror, she doesn't look like someone preparing for sleep. She looks like someone who feels it. On her sink, pills, evidence she is ill, a treatment, or at least the attempt of one. She admits she doesn't even know what they're for, she just swallows a bunch out of habit. That's the paradox of medication. It becomes routine, mechanical, until it loses its meaning. She wants to break that routine, to study them, to delay the inevitable. One is red, slimy, disgusting, she rejects it. The next is yellow, a sleeping pill, and that makes sense. Insomnia has been a silent enemy, nights without rest, hallucinations creeping in, yet she doesn't want this kind of sleep. Sedation is not rest. So she resists, she delays, she examines each pill as if every rejection is a small act of rebellion. And instead she invents her own medicine. She convinces herself it works. Perhaps just a desperate need to believe she's in control of her suffering. After this strange sequence, the girl needs something, a partner, a voice to accompany her through the night. And that's where you come in. The player. You talk with her, she seems to know you, almost intimately. She says it's been a long time since you last met. But then she says something unsettling. She mentioned a manual. She knows the little doses of overdosing and claims it's nothing she couldn't handle. Instead of addressing it, she asks us, aren't you happy? Even a little? The answer itself doesn't matter much. What strikes me is the question. It feels almost random, disconnected from the flow of conversation. On the surface, she's asking us, but beneath that, I feel like she's asking herself. Happiness in this context becomes an impossible standard. She isn't really looking for a yes or no. She's searching for proof that happiness still exists, that it can still be reached. The question isn't casual, it's a quiet confession. She doesn't feel happy herself. Later, we tell her to go to bed. She refuses, and then she says something crucial. We've been in control for too long. Now it's her turn. This moment flips the dynamic. Until now, the illusion was that the player had control, making choices, guiding the narrative like every other games. But this line reminds us, she isn't just a character. She pushes back, demands agency, or perhaps it's simply a way of reclaiming power in a world where she has none. The next line of dialogue we, the player, are given feels crucial. I'll just stay silent until the medicine wears off. At first glance, it reads like a teasing remark, almost playful, but then it raises a disturbing possibility. Are we just a side effect of a medication? Could the player's voice be nothing more than a hallucination? It would explain so much. In the introduction, she was already speaking to herself in the street, answering her own words. What if this entire conversation is just a fractured mind giving itself company? She does need us. She does crave connection. Finally, she asked the devastating question, am I really that pathetic? We say nothing, and she breaks. Tears, uncontrollable. It's heartbreaking. We tell her to wash her face before doing anything else. She stares into the mirror, and the mirror here feels like more than glass. It's a reflection of a soul. In this cramped, suffocating space, there is nowhere to hide. She starts counting, trying to calm herself. Eventually, she says she feels better. She admits she thought she could take control, that today she even managed to do something as simple as buy milk. But for her, even that's monumental. We ask if that's why she threw away her medication. She called it a foolish decision. But I tell her it was her decision. She doubts. She doubts it matters at all, because in her mind she has no control. She explained she thought discarding the pills would give her control, but now the pain is worse, 3 times stronger, unbearable. So I give her an ultimatum: take the medication or I won't talk to you anymore. She panics, she doesn't want to be left alone. I remain silent, and in that silence she gives in. That's the terrifying part. She isn't taking them out of trust in their effect. She's taking them because she fears loneliness. The girl then go back to her room, lie down on the floor, staring at the ceiling, quietly imagining her own death. I ask her if she wants to talk about it. She doesn't. She tries to reorganize her thoughts. She turns her thoughts into fireflies, glowing and alive, but even then, the thoughts mock her, fluttering just out of reach. She loses patience and screams, scattering them into the darkness. And now she has to chase them. In other words, she can't organize her broken thoughts, so we help her. I ask her what she was thinking about while lying down. She insists I should know, but I don't. And then this scene was unsettling, but I can see the vision. Milk is dangerous, poisonous, maybe even fatal. Could she be allergic, or is it a symbolic poison, a standing for self-destructive impulses? There is something else. He who brought the milk. Who is he, and why would he buy something harmful for the girl? Back in reality, she says she experienced death. She sounds almost playful, maybe sarcastic, but the weight of the statement lingers. We ask her again what she was thinking about earlier. She ignores the question. Instead, she suggests we go after the fireflies. But before that, she admits something. She hates choices. Choices overwhelm her, which is ironic, given the entire game is built on choices. To relieve herself of that burden, she shatters the fourth wall, transforming the game into a point and click. And we are the main character there. So we begin searching her room, clicking objects, trying to collect the scattered fireflies. While we play, her obsession with order comes up. She insists everything must stay in place, not just because of tidiness, but because disorder makes her anxious. Now the elephant in the room was the huge pile of bag of milk. I was wondering why so much milk, something so clearly harmful to her. And did she try to end her life countless times with it? After all, in the beginning of the game, she said I promised so many times. So it's at least rather clear that she already drank milk many times in the past. Next, we have the note on the wall. It's a list of dosages and side effects, but it doesn't seem to have been written by the girl. Instead, it seems to have been written by her mother. And by the way, looking at how she describes the handwriting, I think it's not a stretch to affirm that the monster from earlier might be her mom. So, her mother represents a figure both protective and terrifying. Dear Vent, it's not easy to get out of there, she says. A casual remark, but it betrays how trapped she feels in her own home, her own mind. The school bag. When we ask her about school, she claims it was wonderful. It had brighter rooms, better food, and better beds, I guess. We'll have to go back to that later. Anyways, she insists she attended every class while others skipped. But something doesn't add up. Apparently she's not telling the whole story. When we pressed her, her story changes and we have to ask her at least 3 times to get the complete story. The first time she said her father picked her up. He told her she was quote-unquote too old for the program. The second time she actually corrected herself. It was not the fact that she was too old for the program, but her father explicitly said that she needs to grow up while taking her home. So now we can see that she probably did something that made her father angry. The phrase "you've got to grow up" reminds me of her father who's fed up with his child behavior. Actually, the 3rd times we ask her, we see what kind of behavior. We see flashes of violence. That day she was out of control. She beat, scratched, screamed. Teachers stay silent, complicit, they were used to it. Her father had to drag her out by force. So now we know why he told her to grow up. But then, silence. Apparently, they just went back home, nothing else. Her mother greeted them, they ate, and everyone went to their rooms. Strange, isn't it? When we ask her one last time to tell the story, another disturbing fragment emerges. Her father bought milk on the way home. Again, the milk, always circling back like a curse. The truth surfaces. To begin with, perhaps the school wasn't a school at all. Maybe it was a psychiatric institution. We do have the fact that the school has beds, and the teachers are not really fazed by her behavior as hints for that. So that's strange for a school, isn't it? And the father. We now know he bought milk. So in other words, he probably tried to unalive his daughter. Unfortunately, that's not all. The mother, she wasn't there. She wasn't home to greet them. She wasn't home to protect her daughter. And that's probably why she's so harsh on her daughter now. She tries her best to help her by giving her pills and forbidding her to drink milk. Maybe she feels guilty for not having been there for her daughter at time. In her own twisted way, she's trying to keep her daughter alive. But for the girl, both parents are monstrous. One openly violent, the other suffocating under the guise of care. Now you might have a clear vision on everything. Also, you might wonder why we don't see the father anywhere, while the mother is clearly the monster. The answer is that he's probably dead actually. He might have ended himself, ashamed by his own action. This interpretation casts the previous events in a far darker light. What seems like a simple childhood memory of school now becomes a glimpse into trauma, neglect, and abuse. The computer. It was dusty, untouched for years. She said her parents encouraged her to use it. She had hobbies, games, drawing, 3D modeling, but all of it faded after she went online. The game touches something painfully real there, the internet. She explains that nothing online felt real. She had a lot of friends on the internet, but when she turned the computer off, her friends quote-unquote died. But then one person came along, someone who felt too real, someone who made the computer impossible to shut down. That person was her true friend, her best friend. At this point, we have most of the fireflies, so I'll stop there with the exploration for simplicity's sake. I didn't go around all the objects in the room, but I did pick out the important ones, so I suggest you play the game yourself and check each one if you feel like it. Anyway, after recovering her fireflies, we have a small conversation with the girl, where she admits she doesn't even know what being happy feels like. I told her she's probably tired, so I suggested going out onto the balcony. She panics. Even that is too much. So I told her to go to bed instead. But before she does, she tells us she'll never take her pills again. Our conversation with her ends there. Tomorrow we won't be there with her, because the pills aren't just medicine. They're what make us happier. We are not separate from her illness, we're part of it. And a final request before sleep is heartbreaking. She asks us to tell her a story before going to bed. After everything, she wants comfort, even from the voice in her head. So we tell her a story. Her eyes close, the night swallows everything. The first ending begins with the girl waking up on a familiar bench in an alley. She meets a boy named Tresca, and although annoyed, she follows him to the store. At the store, they cannot find the aisle they need. The girl suggests asking someone for help. Tresca immediately approaches another customer, trying to form a request, but freezes. Tresca struggles to interact with others, freezing and breaking down in tears when asked to speak. The girl, unable to understand him, grows frustrated and cruelly tells him to act normal. The boy runs, he's hurt. Later, she finds him at the cash register with milk. Again milk. At the checkout, Tresca is marked for being slow, and the girl, exasperated, pays before storming out. The walk back is silent, tense. Suddenly, Tresca stops, turns back and says, "It looks like you're not helping me at all." This ending can be read as a mirror. First, obviously the ending mirrors the beginning when she herself go buy milk. Tresca represents her own fragile psyche. His panic, confusion and social struggle reflect her inner chaos. By watching him, she's essentially observing herself from the outside. Her own anxiety, her own inability to fit in, her own frustration. She gains a distorted form of self-awareness. She witnesses how overwhelming her action might appear to others. Remember that scene at the school? The final line, quote unquote, "It looks like you're not helping me at all," is especially poignant. This reflects a deep sense of helplessness, where she perceives both herself and the world as incapable of alleviating her suffering. This was the default ending, but depending on your actions, there are 4 other possible outcomes. Let's see the second one. The second ending finds the girl sitting on a rooftop, staring at her phone. She starts receiving messages from a pizzeria, apparently. At first, it seems ordinary, but as she opens up about her loneliness and emptiness, it becomes clear she's talking to her automated system. It cannot listen, only repeat pre-written lines. The girl is trapped with thoughts that do not help her. She loses awareness of her surroundings, her attention completely absorbed by the screen. Her goal seems simple: to adapt, to become normal, to immerse herself in this emptiness until it becomes familiar. She begins to question existence itself. Is living a waste of time? Finally, she looks up. She stopped by a sign, a red circle with a line through it, a universal symbol of prohibition, restriction, or limit. This could represent the constant control imposed by society, the sense that certain behaviors are judged unacceptable or beyond our own control. Then the message session ends, the dream ends. The girl finds herself in front of a mirror, with cheerful music playing in the background. She clearly woke up in the wrong side of the bed, questioning why her face looks stupid, and worrying about how others would perceive her at school. She tries to reassure herself, telling herself that appearing different isn't inherently bad, and it doesn't define her. And that's a good reminder for anyone watching this video. Appearance does not define who you are. Anyway, her mother tells her to get moving and she obeys. Then the scene loops, accompanied by increasingly distorted music. With each repetition, the girl becomes more deformed, her face morphing in surreal and unsettling ways. After several loops, her face even develops a hollow gap where her features should be. She continues to transform, progressively more different from herself. A particularly striking moment is when a double appears in her reflection, staring at the mirror with a displeased expression. Is she judging what she sees? This visual seems to represent internalized self-criticism. The deformation continues, focusing next on her eyes, elongated to the bottom of the screen, followed by a version of her face filled entirely with eyes. She cannot escape what she sees. Every imperfection scrutinized, every detail exaggerated. Eventually, her entire face disappears. The music returns to its cheerful tone, and she appears to enjoy the day. Pretending everything is fine can feel simpler than confronting reality. She decides to change who she is, to reshape herself to conform, to survive social pressures. Ironically, in the final scene, her reflection turns its back on her. She can no longer recognize herself, because it's no longer her. She has forgotten herself. She is lost. From our perspective, we too do not know what she looks like. She has erased her identity. For the next ending, the player must go out onto the balcony, so we'll cover that part before talking about the ending. So the girl steps out, describing the building around her, inspired by a building in real Russia, by the way. She feels anxious, scanning every direction except upwards. When asked why, she sits on the metal railing. She confides that sometimes it feels like the entire world is pretending to be insane, trying to make her believe in things that don't exist. This could be a reflection of her mental health struggles, moments when she recognizes her own crisis. She feels as if everything is designed to confuse her, a narrow, skewed perception of reality. She tells us more about that real friend she had online, which causes her considerable emotional pain. We have a strong image there. She views herself jumping, counting 2 minutes before death. That's how painful it is. She recounts a past online friend, a confidant who claimed to be real. She shared her life with him. He knew more about her than everyone else, only for him to use that information to harass her. Her identity was exposed across the internet. She became trapped, feeling constantly observed by many. This explains her anxiety in public. Her online trauma has made every gaze a potential threat. Suddenly, her body collapses to the ground. The fall met its end. But remember, That's an image. After that, she felt cold, so she returns indoors and disconnects her PC, putting an end to the torment. The girl finds herself in a large closed room with a door letting in faint light and muffled sounds. She curls up, trying to withstand the cold, but it's useless. She feels trapped. Someone approaches, interrupting her thoughts. She withdraws, trying to make herself invisible. The stranger leaves, and the girl decides to rise. The ceilings behave strangely when she touches it. It recedes, as do the walls and the door, and eventually she finds herself in a dimension with no visible boundaries. Like in a dream, she runs endlessly, never reaching an edge. She cannot escape, stuck in darkness and silence, a silence she fears, deeply because being alone terrifies her. But the silence is occasionally broken by a voice, asking how she is. This gives her courage and determination. She exerts all her strength, finally reaching the door and emerging into a field. The field is alive with nature, under a sky with only the moon. Suddenly, she hears an echo, initially thinking it's a wolf. But panic sets in. She doesn't know where the sound comes from, whether to flee or not. Eventually, she spots a distant figure. The figure does not engage and walks away, leaving her disappointed. As she continues walking, she realizes the field is endless, and the sound continues to pursue her. Her fear escalates until darkness envelops her, and she wakes up in the same enclosed room. This scene strongly evokes isolation rooms in psychiatric institutions, barren spaces used to calm patients who are deemed difficult. The intent is to control or manage behavior, but instead it sometimes worsens distress. For the girl, the isolation amplifies anxiety, panic, and trauma. The recurring endless field represents her perception of inescapable stress and constant threat. The faint voice, breaking the silence, symbolizes intermittent support or guidance, but are insufficient to fully alleviate her fear. I received a disturbing achievement titled "Please Make It Stop." This one is about to be special, isn't it? The girl wakes up and sees a staircase stretching infinitely around a giant pillar. A horrifying image. She doesn't know whether to go up or down, losing all sense of orientation. She decides to remain still, doing nothing, preferring to maintain the statu quo, because moving forward seems pointless. Once again, the theme of silence and solitude emerges. Images bend rapidly before our eyes in a frantic rhythm. I'm hypnotized, completely absorbed. The pillars multiply and the music penetrates my mind, playing with my imagination. The images return and I feel less like myself. I try to block my thoughts, but it's useless. My brain is already under control. There is little space left for me. Vague and strange questions appear. The music intensifies and I decide to descend. A voice tells me that I should form images in my mind so everything can be fixed, that everything is real. The girl seems hypnotized. This is probably hypnotherapy. It works by guiding a person into a trance-like state of deep focus. The conscious mind is subdued, and the subconscious mind becomes more accessible. In this state, thoughts, memories, and emotions can surface with greater clarity, allowing the individual to confront them safely under guidance. In the game, the girl is mentally guided to descend the endless staircase, a symbolic journey into her own subconscious, where unresolved trauma, fears, and memories are stored. But this method is unsuitable for everyone. It's clear that the girl was anxious about descending in the first place. Also, The stairsteps likely represent the dives into the depths of her subconscious. The further she descends, the deeper she explores the hidden layer of her mind. It's noteworthy that the dream concludes with a unique soundtrack titled Step 79,365, reflecting the staggering number of steps she had to take and emphasizing the magnitude and depth of her trauma. It's about time we conclude this video. A Bag of Milk Outside a Bag of Milk is more than just a visual novel. It's a journey into the fragile and complex mind of a young girl, struggling with trauma, anxiety, and the weight of social expectations. Each ending offers a different lens into her experiences. From the reflection and self-realization in the first ending, to the crushing isolation of the second, the dissolution of identity in the third, the panic and confinement of the fourth, and finally, the hypnotic exploration of trauma in the fifth. In A Bag of Milk, the girl's dreams guide us through her subconscious, revealing trauma, fears, and desires she cannot confront in waking life. Each ending can be seen as a different pathway through the inner world, reflecting her struggle to understand and save herself. The game touches on severe anxiety and potential mental illness. The girl's struggles reveal how social isolation and the lack of empathy from those around her only deepened her mental health challenges. But despite the dark and often unsettling atmosphere, the game also provides moments of reflection. It doesn't romanticize this kind of problem. The girl suffers, cries, and even her bedroom, the reflection of her soul, is a complete mess. In my opinion, actualizing the narrative encourages empathy, patience, and the awareness that healing is rarely linear. It's okay to seek help, to take time for yourself, and to acknowledge your feelings without shame. After all, even the girl began to change after such a difficult journey. Through all her dreams, through the tears that greeted her waking hours, she starts to understand herself. You won't save her, as you won't be there with her anymore. But perhaps, for the first time, she's finding a way to save herself.